Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of TeikaTV. I have a really good set of guests with me today. We have Alex Kessler, who is in our customer success team. Alex is working with some of our biggest brands as part of our multi-channel growth strategy.
Yep, happy to be here. First appearance on TeikaTV, pretty excited about it.
Yep. And on my left, we have Will Johnson. He's our Director of Product Design.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining. This is going to be an awesome episode, so stick in with us. It's going to be fun.
So we just want to remind you guys that this is your show. We have a big screen up there, and I'm literally going to read out anything that you guys write, well, within reason. So
we're going to be anything.
Yeah, so we're going to be watching the screen. We want this to be really interactive. This is going to be a fun show dedicated to you guys, the sellers, and we want to communicate. So we're going to have a discussion today around brands, building your brand on Amazon and off of Amazon. And we really want to discuss the opportunity to develop intellectual property. I know that there's so many entrepreneurs out there that are looking at Amazon as a place to grow their businesses. And wanted to start with a pretty interesting debate question for you, Will.
Just sure.
Yeah, we're going to kick off with something a little bit contentious. Sure. What's the difference, do you think, between a brand and a private label?
Okay, I knew this question was going to be asked because I get asked this all the time by customer success. Every single time we have somebody new come in, they're always asking me, what is the difference between a private label? They seem like the exact same thing. And you know what? In some cases they are. If you think about Kirkland's Signature, Costco's brand, they are really very similar. They consider themselves a private label, but for us, I consider that a brand. So from that side, it really can be sort of either or. But private labels, I like to think of it as like an iPhone cord. So if I'm going to go buy an iPhone cord on Amazon, I might buy the iPhone brand or the Apple brand, or I might buy one that's $4 and has a different signature.
That's
so like
true. I agree.
Something like Griffin might be considered a private label, probably has sort of changed over into a brand, but that's the type of idea. You might not have the IP on that from more of a manufacturing kind of standpoint, but the biggest difference to me between a private label and a brand is that a brand has a story. And they have a cohesive story that flows throughout the entire business.
And before you started at Teikametrics, you were actually working at IBM Watson, and they took years to build that brand, so you know a lot about it.
Yeah, IBM Watson.
I love that story piece.
Yeah. I mean, IBM Watson has completely changed IBM. The Watson technology, because it is more than just AI. It's sort of this reframing of how society is going to work in the future. And even though they're not at that point yet, they're really sort of leading the way, like charging up the mountain sort of in this new sort of era that we're kind of going to be living in. And you're seeing it every single day.
But
automation.
It took them a long time to build that story.
Oh yeah, and I mean, they had people working on that to build the story. It takes a lot of work and energy to create something, that can be full advertising. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off. I said I'd read out everything there. So Darius is saying hello. Hi, Darius.
Hey, welcome.
Thank you for joining us.
Well, wait, I want to jump in super quick. Do you think that in comparison, a brand or a private label, I would argue that a brand has loyalty or followers. So if I'm going to go on to Amazon and I buy an iPhone cord, I don't really care who sells it. I just want to get something that I'm looking for, right? It meets the demand that I'm currently looking for. A brand, I go and I want to buy a specific type of jacket from a specific brand.
Yeah,
so it's like,
point.
it is a story, but again, I think just in terms of IP, I think that kind of stands out to me.
Yeah, I think, private label, if you think about the sort of evolution of Amazon, I was one of the first third-party retailers back in 2003, and at that point it was all about reselling. And what changed, way back then, if you tried to come up with your own brand in retail, you would literally be buying inventory, hiring a rep group to go to retail stores and get your inventory in there. Of course, Amazon has made it cheaper than ever before to establish your own intellectual property and get the products to consumers using FBA, for example, all around the world. And I think what happened first was what I think of private label started first, where people are data mining, looking at Amazon, seeing what's selling, and then really going out and in a way looking at Alibaba and saying, look, I can find this inventory out there. I'm going to stamp it differently. I think now that that's probably 3 or 4 years ago, and now it's evolved into some of the brands that Alex, you're working with, where you've got really established brands that we're working with. We work with brands that are on Shark Tank, for example, and I think it becomes much more complex today than it was even 12 months ago. It's evolving quickly. So one question I have for you, Alex, is, you're working with lots of these brands. Which brands are doing well? If you wanted to start a brand tomorrow yourself, what would you do? It's
such a loaded question, right? I mean, I think that the IP factor really comes into play here, and it also kind of serves the purpose of what we're talking about is the jungle scout effect, kind of, right? Yeah. So everyone's going and sourcing their products from the same places, and therefore everyone's going and they're selling the same products. So the market's getting extremely saturated, and people are unable to find a niche. So I think if you are a brand or even a private label, the best place to be is to find a niche where something is lacking, which is kind of an ambiguous type of statement. But as long as you're able to find a demand that currently is not met, that's the best place to be in terms of actually creating a brand where you can have a following.
And what kind? I mean, that's interesting. The jungle scout effect. I totally agree. And it's almost like it's like repricing was the thing, as I mentioned. Exactly. I've seen this evolve. Where resellers were competing against each other, like driving margins, to the floor basically, and it almost in a way that's what's happening with private label. So Alex, what brands are establishing their niches? I mean, what are the categories that you're seeing? And actually, it'd be great for the audience to step in. We'd love to hear what you guys are selling. But, what do you think, Alex? What are the growing categories?
I know, like I said, it's kind of loaded, but a lot of times I see categories that have really high markups in traditional brick and mortar retail do really well. So these are things like beauty. Beauty, I think, is like number one in my eyes in terms of, one, it has IP. These products have IP. Number two, these items ship small and light. You have to be, applied to actually get into the category. So if you're going to get into cosmetics, those are notoriously expensive, especially if you go to the brick and mortar retail. Same with grocery. I mean, I see grocery picking up quite a bit. Other ones, especially these are, I think it was interesting. I see some sellers that are doing grocery products that are on the go. So if you're selling like,
interesting.
like smoothie type products or something like that, where people are easily able to purchase it online, grab it and take it with them, that's kind of a trend. And I think what it comes down to in my eyes is who are the people that are shopping online the most, right? It's millennials and it's baby boomers who are perusing the internet the most. So if you're looking to see exactly where you should look, it's like look at the people who are buying. Right. At least I think.
On grocery, what type of grocery products? I mean, obviously FBA is a factor. And what type? I mean, we're talking non-perishable. It's the specific type of grocery products that I think there's a lot of opportunity there because it is difficult to do.
Right.
But you're not talking about like grocery in the sense of.
Like produce, right? I mean,
I'm talking about that, right?
I probably wouldn't be selling produce on Amazon, but I mean, if you can find a way to get your produce and turn over your inventory every week before it goes bad, I mean, that is really highly marked up in the grocery store. Produce is extremely expensive.
So let's share some tactics though. I think, again, this is for the audience. This is to help sellers perform. So you work with sellers. What tactics are really important, Alex? For a brand to establish themselves?
Brand registry. You have to do it. You got to do brand registry. Well, don't you, do you agree?
I think that every single one of our brands that is really, moving up and is honestly going 10x, they are all brand registered. They all have enhanced brand content. They all have that stuff set up, and they have a cohesive story, like I was saying. If you were on the webinar yesterday, we really sort of dove deep into that idea. But it's incredibly important, especially today. The competition is just you're going to be passed right by. It's just the reality of it.
Well, people are really doubling down and are going heavy on headline search ads, enhanced brand content, all of that information that you're able to take advantage of, sponsored ads as well. I mean, I would argue that Amazon has become so much more brand-centric now that they have, or I guess the turning point for me was when they gave the enhanced brand content from Vendor Central's A+ detail pages. So as soon as that happened, you're actually able to tell your brand story, which is something that a lot of big brands didn't love about Amazon.
Yeah, right. And then so going back to sort of private label and 2 or 3 years ago, brand registry didn't really exist in the form that it does today. So excuse me, the cost of launching a brand has gone up, right? Because you have to get the trademarks, you have to really go through the steps for brand registry in order to do that. Do you think that means, that does play into the niche, right? There's a higher barrier to entry. Do you think that means that there's going to be less international sellers kind of white labeling products to come in? Because, I mean, it's harder to get a US trademark, and there's a cost of just flipping inventory. I mean, it makes it. I think what's important from an economic standpoint in a market like this, where everyone's trying to do the same thing, when things become harder and difficult, that's actually an opportunity for an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fact, right?
Yeah.
Agreed. No, I totally agree. And I think that there are always going to be people white labeling from China. Like, that's just the fact of Amazon being the open marketplace that it is. I think
there's a really good question.
Oh, okay,
Sorry to cut you off there.
No, go. How do I build my brand off of Amazon?
And you're doing a lot of work with sellers right now on this.
I mean, it's really interesting because a lot of the data that you find on Amazon can actually be applied across channels. But I think the biggest area of impact is creating this cohesive brand story and being able to articulate that on Shopify, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Amazon. And Amazon is luckily giving a lot more opportunity these days for sellers to actually take advantage of that and tell their brand story.
But where, if you're a seller, where are you selling off of Amazon that's successful?
I think you have to have your own website. You need that to be brand registered anyways. It's part of the qualifications, although it says that it's not mandatory. If you're going to apply for brand registry, you should have your own site. Do you think so too?
Absolutely.
I think where should you sell off Amazon? I mean,
but where is the demand coming from?
I think it depends on your category.
Right now, I know. I mean, we're talking significant Facebook volume for a lot of the Shopify sellers.
Yeah, I think that Shopify is a big one because your margins are just going to be better there. If you can connect with the right audience, that's more likely to purchase your product. So this is actually an interesting conversation. Like, do you guys buy something when you are perusing Facebook or Instagram and an ad comes up, right? If I was taken to someone's website, would you purchase it?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean, personally, I'm surprised by the numbers when we've looked at Shopify data. I mean, Shopify is a public company. We know a lot of the Amazon brands are also on Shopify, to your point about our website. And to see the numbers that are through Instagram and Facebook, what do you think about Instagram?
I think Facebook stock says it all. They're doing incredibly well.
Right.
And the reason is because of advertising and because people are buying, and it's the best place to get in front of your customer. So it might not be the highest conversion rate for a sale, but people are able to see the trend of, as they're advertising through Facebook, over time they are growing sales, and that brand awareness is worth its dollar.
Worth its weight in gold, right?
Exactly.
Would you, you mentioned the iPhone cable.
Yeah.
What would you, if you're a private label, would you do? I mean, it doesn't make sense, does it, for Instagram?
You know what, like the thing about private label and what gets me always sort of muddied up is that it really, in the beginning, I think it's a great way for a new person to get in building a brand because they're not going to have the manufacturing that they need in order to build that brand. Whereas all of a sudden, as you move and as people start to know the name, like Griffin, who was a private label originally, it suddenly transfers over. And once people understand that name and they recognize it and they have that quality or that brand equity around it, go ahead. There might be another one.
Here's a great question
really good
from
question,
James. Does Amazon look favorably upon brand-registered products and rank them higher in search results and offer enhanced ad coverage? Certainly, enhanced ad coverage for sure because of HSA, right? That's what you're doing. Let's explain, to James and the rest of the audience, the upside for advertising with brand registry.
Yeah, so if you are brand registered, you have the opportunity to run headline search ads as long as you have 3 individual products that have their own UPCs, as well as partake in enhanced brand content. So just because you're brand registered and you're using enhanced brand content doesn't mean you're going to rank innately higher just because you're taking advantage of that, especially because it's free, right? Take advantage of it if you can, but what you should use is headline search ads. And I would argue that sponsored ads and headline search ads are the 2 biggies, but HSA is only available to brand registered sellers, and that is the most valuable placement. It's like the Super Bowl commercial, right? Well,
James, I mean, absolutely. HSA, headline search ads, these are the ads that are at the top of the fold. It's actually called the Sparkle. That's what Amazon calls it. And those give you the highest number of impressions. In testing, Alex, you've been working with sellers. You've seen that the ACoS for headline search actually be lower than sponsored products in certain cases, right?
Yeah, in certain cases, but I would honestly argue that the goal of HSA isn't to push velocity and efficient, profitable sales. It's just an opportunity for you to get your brand out there, get
Agreed.
those impressions, and get those click-throughs. And then ideally, right, this is going to be the top of your sales funnel, is just to drive additional traffic, and then you use this to supplement your sponsored products more than anything. But to be fair, I have seen headline search ads convert pretty efficiently, especially if you're using them the right way, you're testing your creative, writing new headlines, using good customer search data to make all of your decisions.
And
so
headline,
I think
and
it
headline
depends.
search ads is just a piece of a puzzle for what Amazon's doing with brands. They announced really recently that Amazon stores are coming out, and the headline search ads are going to be a direct funnel right into your store. So really, I think getting in there early right now and getting your brand awareness, you're getting it at pennies on the dollar right now. In a year and 2 years, just look at the difference in price that's going to be there.
Oh, there we go.
So,
Got a great question from Mike. When do I know to go global as a brand? You mentioned other channels to sell on, but what about other countries? When do you suggest entering markets beyond America, North America, any markets that are expanding for sellers today?
India.
India?
I think so, yeah. I mean, if you guys listen to the Q3 earnings report, I mean, they were asked quite a few times what countries were
Well, I think
going
you've
to
got
be
to be
big.
careful there from a seller standpoint, right? So we're really excited about India, and so is Amazon. But
Is it ready though?
What's really exciting about India is just the scale. In India, the percentage of e-commerce of retail is only around 3% versus 10% in the US. So what's interesting to India, I would argue, isn't necessarily what a seller today selling on Amazon US should be interested in. I think, and I just got back from the UK, met some really large sellers out there. And when you look at being able to take your products from the US into Europe via the UK or Germany, I think that's a much more applicable market that's more transferable to US products. I mean, what do you think, Will, in terms of global opportunity?
I do. When selling, knowing your market is really important. Even for our own advertising here at Teikametrics, a banner that converts really well in the US actually might not convert that well in the UK.
Yeah.
And it's even further away if it's more India and China, etc. But go ahead.
Here we go. We've got a question from Jackie. Thank you so much, Jackie. I've seen that ACoS for HSA and Vendor Central AMS normally has higher ACoS than sponsored products. Maybe it's different through Seller Central. Well, Alex, what are your comments? I mean, you look at a lot of this data.
I think it's interesting because now that they've rolled out HSA and Seller Central to all of the sellers that are brand registered, it would make sense to me that your cost of running advertisements for headline search is going to be more expensive than running it in AMS. Right, so this is just headline search to headline search.
It
but
looks like the question
when it comes to
was more
sponsored products, though, right? As sponsored products as compared to HSA, that's interesting.
Well, I think again, your point earlier and Will's point was sort of thinking about more the value of headline search.
Yes.
I think you've got to think about headline search slightly differently in terms of building a brand. It's a very visual unit if you think about that sparkle. And,
Will,
it is.
content, exactly.
And Will, you're a product designer and a really good one, right? So how important is it, the images, the colors, the design, and even the copy? What's the psychology of seeing a product from a seller on the Sparkle and HSA and then going into
that funnel? The biggest issue I think I see in the market on Amazon is a lack of investment in design, in storytelling, and in imagery.
100%.
I know, oftentimes we recommend that people will just do it on their own, and of course, in many cases, that's what you have to do. But I think that the people that you really are seeing winning, look at the people who are top sales rank. they have great stories. Their imagery is hugely tailored. They have a sort of a cohesive identity around everything. And they're not afraid to spend hundreds, thousands of dollars to create that because it will pay off. And I mean, really, Alasdair, you brought me into Teikametrics because you believe in that as well.
Yeah,
about telling
absolutely.
the Teikametrics story. So if we're doubling down on it and Amazon is doubling down on it, it makes sense to follow the money and do it yourself.
Do you have to have a website though? Do you have to take that story off of Amazon? And Alex, again, over to you in terms of, you mentioned Shopify a number of times.
Right.
How much money? Because now you're talking lots of money from an entrepreneur standpoint, right? Like it's one thing to do nice product imagery, copy, and content on Amazon, and it's interesting, right? Like when you're talking to our brands that have their own Shopify stores, there's a big range. There's the sort of Shopify store where someone's thrown it up quickly, they've used the basic Shopify template, or they've actually gone out and built a fully blown out store. Really. What do you think? How important is that website?
I think it's extremely important. I think that your online presence in today's day and age is probably the number one thing that's going to build your it's credibility, right? So imagine if you are on someone's Amazon page and you decide that you like the product and you want to look at them on other channels, right? Like, let's go see what other products these guys have. Perhaps you go peruse Facebook, and then you notice they have like 10 followers, right? And then you notice
do you do that? I mean, I don't know if I do that.
Well,
So
maybe it's just because we all work in e-commerce, so perhaps we take additional steps. But from my experience, I've seen that sellers that have grown their brand on Amazon and then have also realized the potential of using Shopify to consistently grow their brand presence, and then they use the information from their listings on Shopify or from their listings on Amazon, and they bring it over and they do very, very similar styles on enhanced brand content or HSA.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily arguing with your point, but I think what's important for the sellers to think about is that depends on what you're trying to do, right?
That's true.
Let's say if you're a fashion brand, I think the Instagram angle, the Facebook angle, the content, the aesthetic matters a lot. But if you're, let's say, more of a widget, like a kitchen,
industrial and scientific products,
like that,
perhaps I think that is a really
here we
valid
go.
one.
Tanya's saying, when creating brand in Amazon, is it beneficial to pursue Amazon's social media platforms like Spark and Interesting Finds? How does one reach out to the Amazon influencers to do so?
Interesting.
So we've been talking about this, right? We're talking about promoting your Amazon store through Facebook and social media channels.
I know. I would argue that it's more important to grow your brand using social media channels that the masses use instead of the people that Amazon use. And to be fair, it's probably a combination of both. But instead of focusing on Spark and Interesting Finds, I mean, I would push more heavily on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and those to build your social media presence.
You're referring there to pushing from Facebook and actually advertising your Amazon product, right?
Well, there's actually something really exciting too, and I don't think it's rolled out to everybody yet, but if you are brand registered, you should go check under your promotions drop-down menu, because they're rolling out a social media promotion. And honestly, this is what gets me the most excited, because it basically will allow you to create a discount, a percentage off discount from 15 to 40%, and it will lead to a specific landing page or a marketing page that will automatically apply the coupon, so the customer doesn't have to apply it at checkout. So this comes down to the fact, so say you decide to advertise on Facebook, you can lead that external traffic to your Amazon site where the coupon's already applied. And I think that that's the difference, right? Like, people go to Amazon with the intent to purchase.
Well, I think to answer Tanya's question, I mean, I'm really in favor of just testing and experimenting, right? Like, you're in a market where things are changing so often. Like, literally, Amazon is rolling out new tools all the time. So, Tanya, my suggestion would be try it.
Yeah, I would
try
agree.
and measure and adjust.
Yeah.
And I think it's the entrepreneurs that are always trying new things. I mean, if you're at the forefront, and this is why, honestly, this is why we're doing this show, why as a brand, Teikametrics, we want to share as much information as possible. So our philosophy is to always try and test and measure. So if the cost is low, if the risk is low, just try it. And I'd actually be really interested to hear how you get on with that. I'd love to learn more about your brand. Jackie is writing, thanks. Do you think that it may be more appealing, interesting to show a variety of different products in HSA rather than a display of very similar products that would have similar keywords? So it's interesting when you're thinking. We're talking. That's a great question.
A really good
Jackie.
question.
Talking about the display of the different units. What do you think? Well, as a design perspective.
So I think the real answer there is about what, once again, your brand story is. If you have 3 different items that you're selling, like headphones, maybe like an adapter, an XYZ, the message that you're going to write within HSA is going to be really different than if you just have 3 backpacks up there.
Right.
You might say
Right.
something about the best backpacks, but if you have 3 different things, then it's about what you represent as a brand, of your quality, of like the different sort of areas that you work in, and sort of to get people really interested in you as a company, less so about seeing a whole bunch of different products. Like you might have different types of hats or mittens, etc.
And there's we want to not make sure we don't miss that question from Penny. Penny's asking if a keyword doesn't bring conversions, would you recommend lowering the bid or pausing the keyword? So that's a very tactical question.
I know. I think it actually relates really heavily to Jackie's question as well, because my recommendation is to use the customer search data to make any decisions about headline search ads. So I like to use this example. Say, for instance, you sell different hair products, and you notice that people are searching for and are finding your products based on type, right? Like you have products that people are looking for curly hair or volume hair, and then what I would do is I would say, okay, people are searching for these curly hair products in different ways. They're saying anti-frizz products. They're saying, I want like defined curls, natural curls.
Yeah.
So that's how I would create my headline search ads, is I would group all my curly hair products together, right? Because they're related. But I would use the keywords that convert really well in sponsored ads.
Absolutely right, and that's very, very important point for the sellers to understand data mining using sponsored products and using HSA. But back to Penny's point,
you got it.
I just want to highlight, we have a platform that's able to actually do a lot of that automation work that Penny's suggesting. It's called Sponsored Products Optimizer. There's a link there. It's absolutely free to try out. And what the software is doing is actually doing that optimization, looking and seeing where significant words are converting and not, and actually helping to load balance and balance budget. Because at the end of the day, what you're looking for is profitability.
Right.
So thanks, Penny. That's a great question. We've got another question here from Nathan, who's asking a really important question. I have just developed a product line. Where do you start?
I wonder what kind of products they are, right?
Yeah,
I think it kind of depends. Yeah. Nathan, right in. But just to super quickly articulate, I think for Penny, lower the bid first, test it, see if it's not converting really well, and then if you end up wasting X number of dollars that you have a specific threshold for, right? Go in there and pause it. That's what I would recommend first.
But using of
course, like adjust the bid first.
Either looking in the sponsored product platform, which
100%.
we're able to do that, or Seller Central.
100%.
And it's really that constant tweaking. So very good point. Thanks for following up on that, Alex. But let's get back to Nathan. Nathan's saying shaving products. Well, great. I mean, if you think about the shaving industry,
I have a lot to say about that.
Like
it.
Harry's is a brand that's kind of disrupted. Gillette or Dollar Shave Club. What are your thoughts on shaving? Well,
as you can see that I only trim. I don't actually do a full shave. It's interesting when you're talking about shaving products. I think it's important to look at where the market's moving around these sort of boutique brands, is what I call them. There's sort of a renaissance going on right now.
People are calling it the Menaissance.
Yeah.
Because the men are really, really heavily shopping for these products online.
I would say, first and foremost, if you're creating a shaving product line, get your branding from a graphic design standpoint done. You want your products to be beautiful, packaged really beautifully. When people, especially with shaving, and when you're dealing with men or women, the aspects of masculinity or femininity come in there pretty substantially. So understanding exactly where you're trying to hit is important. Like if you look at Dove and how they've taken the women's line of products and moved it over to men's, there's a huge difference. So I would really make sure that you have that branding, and beautiful product photography, really importantly.
So that's the most important.
And you're a product designer, Will. So you really think about that sort of the beautiful design first. I would say, from an entrepreneur standpoint, you've got to hedge what Will's saying, and think about what can you do on Amazon for least risk that does test the branding piece, and start to think about what are the what are the things that you can do to test to make sure the investment's a good one? I mean, we talk to entrepreneurs all the time. At the end of the day, it's risk. So if you're just starting, Nathan, I think the most important thing is to understand, as an entrepreneur, try and, hope for the best but plan for the worst, and be very, very careful about that. And you've got to hedge that with what Will's saying, because it's the catch-22 if it's not good enough. So my thoughts would be, to actually test with a small number of products and really go for a super high quality landing page, meaning content, enhanced brand content, photography, brand copy. And then
copy,
just
right? Amazon's a search bar.
Yeah,
like
you got a small amount of inventory.
Yeah.
Another question from Tanya here. Are there certain products that perform better in HSA, such as household goods or daily use? I'm guessing they're from Tanya, like when you go onto Amazon, it's an interesting question because when I think of that sparkle, I always think of like Colgate or like household brands because those are the big volume traffic items.
Exactly.
And what have we seen though? Like you don't have to name our sellers' brands, but what types of HSA are you running right now?
I've seen household items do quite well, right? And what's good about headline search is that it's keyword based. So like if you're typing in something specifically on Amazon, you're looking to buy that item more often than not. So I think it really just depends on the demand for the product. And like I'm saying now, it's obviously keyword based. So find the ones that work best for your type of product that have proven to work and sponsor ads first. But like in terms of category levels, I think that it is more keyword based instead of category based.
I think this is a visual, you've heard Will talk about storytelling. I mean, it's a very visual ad unit, right?
But on Amazon, you can only use product images except for like one major image of your brand, right? So it's not like you're able to actually do this beautifully graphic designed headline. I think that it's really about the product.
But you can still showcase the product.
Yeah, sure.
So I think it's interesting. It's a debate. And again, testing is everything. I mean, I think we're seeing a lot of change. I think you're seeing, even there was an article today about Amazon changing the sponsored products, the gully on the right-hand side. And there's a lot of ad units. So there's another question here from Usman. So thank you very much, Usman. I've been selling on eBay for the last 2 years and recently launched my own website. I have my own brand vape and kits, and I want to ask what platform I should use for promoting my brand, products, and website itself. So, interesting. I think there's some restrictions on that particular category, but assuming that doesn't restrict you from working on Amazon, I think Amazon. If you've just been selling on eBay and you're not selling on Amazon, clearly Amazon, is dominant. So you want to get on the Amazon platform
if possible.
Yeah, and go as quickly as possible. But go through all of the steps required, which is brand registry and optimization. Question there from Andy. Thanks a lot, Andy.
2 Andys.
Hi guys, my name is Andy. Hi. I own a small skin company, Procara.com. We launched 18 months ago, Shopify website, and got 6 items on Amazon. Pretty solid sales with no advertising.
Wow.
Any ideas where to start?
Well, my God.
Sponsored products, brand registry. I'd be interested, Andy, if you're using brand registry or not, but that's really promising. That you've obviously doing something really well there. Alex, we have sellers all the time coming on board. Obviously, we'd love to help Andy too. What would if you knew that someone was growing quickly with no sales?
Oh my God.
Sorry, no advertising.
It's just for me, it's like, wow, imagine the opportunity with that additional marketplace. Real estate, imagine if you could get on your competitors' pages. Imagine if you could use the ads to get in front of even more traffic that's going to buy your products. So I think you should start advertising immediately using sponsored ads at least.
I think your point's really good because a lot of sellers come in working with us with sponsored products who actually are doing it the other way around. They're actually running a product which necessarily hasn't been selling and then trying to bet that sponsored products takes it over.
That's
but
true.
if you've got conversion, you've got what an entrepreneur would call product market fit.
Yeah.
You've already got it rolling. So I think that's a really good sign and really kind of relates to some of the other questions from other people. You want to do what Andy's doing. You want to get conversion organically first to prove product market fit, profitability, reviews, and then apply advertising. So really, really good question.
And if you need a business partner, just ask me. I'd love to join in. Yeah,
I also think it depends. Like, are you looking to advertise on your Amazon store or are you looking to advertise your Shopify store, right? So if you're looking to advertise Shopify, you got to do it on Facebook. I mean, nothing goes viral on Facebook unless you pay to play. Same with Amazon. I think that's like a good comparison. I would definitely run that on Facebook too.
I mean, we're going to be very interested to follow up with you, Andy. See how this goes.
Definitely.
The other Andy asked, what other countries I should be selling in? What countries are growing the fastest? Well, interestingly, we've already talked about India, but I think the opportunity to grow internationally is very, very interesting for a brand. I mean, when I started as a reseller back in 2003, we had retail agreements, wholesale agreements, where we were unable to sell outside the United States. That's completely changed if you've got your own brand. So really the sky's the limit, but you have to look at what are the most mature markets where consumers are similar to the US, assuming that, Andy, you're going from US to outside of the US. So when we look at that, it would be Germany is the second largest mature market, and then the UK. But if you're in any of the European countries, you can use FBA to fulfill.
Well, what about Canada? That's extremely similar to US.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's a lot smaller in terms of demand.
It definitely is smaller.
But it is easier to do. The North American Unified Account option for Amazon.
It definitely surprises me that Canada's Amazon presence is not as big as it is. Like, I am surprised that Canada does not have as big of a demand. I think it could have the most untapped potential, at least in the cities.
Well, Chuck's asking about Amazon Australia. So that's interesting. Yeah, I know that's very new. Yeah, hi, Chuck. I wonder if he's down there in Australia. So, yeah, he would be a day ahead. Do you know Amazon Australia is getting ready to launch in 2 weeks? Yes, we did, and it's very exciting. I mean, they're literally taking over the world. I think actually Australia is a really interesting market. I visited there last year, and in Australia, brands test a lot. US brands often test in Australia because it's English speaking, similar demographics, similar consumer behavior.
Yeah, interesting. A lot of the brands that I work with actually started in Australia too, so that must be true, yeah.
Richard's stepping in and giving his advice on Canada. Thanks, Richard. So Canada, Chuck says that too. Canada Post is useless.
Wow.
There's your answer, Alex.
Wow, that's the reason. That's
bad
crazy.
experience in Canada, shipping and taxes are nightmares. Yeah,
wow.
So I mean, that was, okay, so let's talk about that. Do you expand globally or do you double down on the US? There's this idea of being focused or being diverse. What do you think, Will?
Personally, I've always worked in a space that I know. In almost everything, I've worked in a space that I know. I would personally double down and try to be the best that I can be in the US before I decided that I was ready to be able to take the risk. Because I think at its core, that is what it is. It's a risk to go anywhere else. If you are going to expand too quick, think about ancient Rome. They went everywhere in the world and they weren't able to sort of contain that idea. So they felt like,
it's a pretty good analogy.
It's true. It's if you're not going to, if you can't take the risk, then don't bet on it because you're in the end you're going to fail.
And does that apply to Amazon versus Facebook? Would if you're absolutely going gangbusters on Amazon, do you try and acquire sales on Facebook, or do you continue to focus on Amazon?
I think the investment into Facebook and even into Shopify, any other advertising areas, is much, much, much smaller, and you can start with a test budget of $5 or $10. So.
Oh, great question from Pat. Thank you for providing such insight. Well, thank you for joining, Pat, and thank you for saying that. We are a new startup, and this is our first Q4. What advice would you give to a new startup? Well, Q4. I mean, we're very close. I mean, it's Thanksgiving next week, right? And actually, we'll be skipping our Thursday slot for that, eating our turkeys. But I think it's an opportunity to really learn, right? Like if you're new going into Q4, we're a data science company. We believe in the advantage coming from the data. So Pat, I would learn as much as possible about your conversion rates, your shipping times, your profits, your prices. Prices are really important. And really learn as much as you possibly can about this Q4 right now. It's a little bit late to make major adjustments. I think you've got to think about some of the strategies that Will's talked about, which are relating to really thinking about focus. So learn as much as you can. Get your team together and build a plan for 2018, a game plan to make 2018 a platform to expand.
Right, I would agree.
And if you can post any details about your business, obviously no names or anything, but we can always answer a little bit more based off of what area of business you're in. So,
well, it's been we've actually gone over time, but thank you so much for every comment. I mean, it's been a real pleasure. We want to do more and more of that, and we want to get any follow-up. So feel free to reach out to us at Teikametrics.com. We have our free 30-day trial of Sponsor Products Optimizer that can actually do a lot of the optimization we've discussed in terms of sponsor products. And have an amazing week, end to your week. Next week will be off because it's Thanksgiving. But thank you everybody for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
See you later.